Whoa, okay, there's been a bit of an argument between two other content creators at the moment, DripSauce and Lumos, and on this topic it seems like some believe that DC Comics is limited in spatial dimensions, which then rates the cosmology lower than some other franchises in terms of scope and power, while the opposing side insists it's unlimited, proving a boundless scale for the DC cosmology. So I'd like to toss a lot of nerd stuff at you for a second and confuse the hell out of both communities, because I've studied this stuff for years and years, and oh Jesus, I just realized how old I am. Anyway, let's debunk this. First, Grant talks about brain theory being the basis for the Final Crisis series and Into the Multiversity, which was released in 2014. Grant mentions recursive isomorphic scales, which if you take just 2 seconds and copy and paste this to a Google search, you'll find the meaning. You'll find copious amounts of data that literally only me and nobody else in the entire DC Comics scaling community has ever read before. I'm kidding. There has to be somebody else out there. Anyone, please God help me. Anybody at all. Isomorphism scaling is literally what we do in the comics scaling community, a discussion about the intensity factor of the number of x in a set of natural numbers, which ends up being infinite. This recursive isomorphic scale is a reference to two different sets of natural opposing numbers and what contains them, which in this case is bleed or bulk space. There are infinite natural numbers. Yep. Totally infinite, with the infinite fractionalized potentials of them too, which in this case is what 2D manifolds are and 2D space groupings, and that can be a reference to that as well, which is another thing that Grant mentioned elsewhere. The multiversity map is a front-facing view of the hologram universe diagram, which is what Grant said this is based on. The map is not a flat disk, it's just a 2D frontal view of a cone that we are looking into. The interior is the furthest away from us, like we're looking into a cup, into the bottom of a cup, being the furthest away from us when we hold it up to your face. Brain cosmology is based on Dirichlet's theorem, which is based on vector spaces, which themselves have infinite spatial dimensions. Okay, so that's the debunk for DripSauce, my man. I'm so sorry, but DC by itself does have infinite geometry and infinite spatial dimensions, not just 6. But let's now debunk Lumos on this too, because he was also wrong on some of these comments that he made. Lumos has consistently insisted that Perpetua is real, and that the Great Darkness was real, and that the 6th dimension was real. But my bro here hasn't read Justice League versus the Legion of Superheroes, where Vandal Savage explains that the Great Darkness was just a construct of the Gold Lantern Ring, and that the Great Darkness never happened. So, at the end of Death Metal 7, the hands refer to the new coming threat that is beyond everything we've just witnessed in the Metal series. So fast forward to Incarnate number 4, and we get an exposition of the Great Darkness origin by Dr. Multiverse, who says she has cosmic insight gifted to her by the crack that is linked to the Great Darkness that is inside of her. She even goes as far as speculating about all of this with her hands up in the air like she has no idea what the real answer is, but for some reason, comic scalers ignored that social cue and just decided to listen anyway. So, if this crack of insight into the cosmic truth is based entirely on Vandal Savage's Gold Lantern Ring and not any actual Great Darkness, then the entire Great Darkness exposition is fraudulent and not real. We can't use the Great Darkness to scale anything because it's not a real thing and was a false projection from a Gold Lantern Ring that Vandal Savage was using. Next, the 6th dimension can't be used to scale anything because it's also not real and was a fabrication made by the hyperadapter used by Darkseid. Why? Because the author said this series is brand new and not tied to anything else. More than a few times.
But with 6, I mean, the things that happen at the end are pretty bold, you know, and definitely rewrite a lot of sort of mythology of the DCU. And
Also, the wording and phrasing that Scott used just happens to be identical to the talks that Darkseid had in Justice League Odyssey.
It's the same shit. The same shit.
About using creation mythology to revise the entire history of the DC multiverse. So Scott says the identically same line that Darkseid uses, making a new creation mythology for the DCU. We can use our brains here and understand what this means. More so, we've just found that Scott directly debunked you already on this 6 years ago, on the Metal series being something that oversights the entire canon collections of the meta of DCU. That is false.
This is something that plays in conjunction with Grant's Multiversity. It actually uses the map from Multiversity, you'll see in the story. I mean, so it's trying to sort of just give new lanes to drive in within the existing cosmology and not...
The Metal series is not on top. It really doesn't do that. It's another Hypertime lane referenced on Grant's Final Crisis and Multiversity map, which is what I've been trying to tell you for literal years and years and years. Metal is another canon of the DCU, and it's one of the lanes of Hypertime that Grant mentioned on the map, which resides outside of the DCU entirely. There is one inside and there is one outside. Grant's is outside. Why can't we use anything inside of a Hypertime lane on the 2014 map to reference DC scaling overall? Because the entire 2014 Multiversity series is a dream of Nix Wotan, and all the other Hypertime lanes in it are literal fabrications of the Super Judge that the Overvoid made to keep all stories of the DCU safe. In fact, DC comes out and says Final Crisis was meant to contain all of the other stories more than once, and that the original Flaw contained every future arc of the DCU, even ones that aren't written yet.
Bruh.
Metal being a Hypertime lane on the map means Metal and Dark Crisis is a drug-induced trip of Nix Wotan from Final Crisis, dreaming events like his alter ego in the comic series that he dreams of being imprisoned by a Batman who laughs. He dreams of a cosmic mother, a mother he lost during Final Crisis. And when a Joker who laughs is lost forever inside of a Death Sun that is referred to as an infinitely small part of his dad, Mandrak, who was there to eat stories and watched them when they were first born. The Death Sun is a reference to Mandrak, and it was there before Perpetua even arrived. Also later, the Great Darkness that looms over the entire cosmology, which is confirmed as just a fabrication of Vandal Savage, the man who invoked the ultimate darkness back in Final Crisis, who started all of the problems for Nix Wotan back then. So Lumos, you can't use Metal to scale DC composite cosmology. You can only use it to justify one Hypertime lane, and that's just Scott's and James. You can't use it to justify DC as a whole. So I hope that clarifies things for you both. You both had valid points, and both of you were wrong on some of the aspects of the arguments, and I'm more than happy to talk to both of you more in depth in DMs or on Discord if you ever want to. Both of you are welcome anytime.